Good evening, TCPCG. Thank you for watching the evening news. I am your host, Kevin Aniello. Tonight, we will be discussing Engaging the Adolescent Learner, Text Complexity and Close Reading by Douglas Fisher and Nancy Frey. And we begin our report tonight with the introduction. The beginning of the article stresses the importance of the new Common Core State Standards, or CCSS. The article notes, the English Language Arts portion of the standards call for a coordinated effort of literacy instruction in English, science, history, social sciences, and technical subjects. This means reading is not just important in English class anymore, but all over, especially the content area classes. But what does this mean? This means helping our students understand complex texts. The article states, quote, in order to steadily build students' capacity for comprehending complex texts, teachers must carefully scaffold these reading experiences. But how do we determine such complexity of texts? The article breaks it down into 3 factors. 1. Quantitative factors, like word count and sentence length. 2. Qualitative factors, like text structure, organization, and visual supports like pictures. And 3. The reader, such as language proficiency, background knowledge, the reader's experience, and the reader's motivation. Now, we've already talked in class about these quantitative factors via the readability calculator online. So let's go out to our news correspondent for the qualitative factors. Kevin?
Thank you, Kevin. Qualitative factors, unlike quantitative factors, require a human being to calculate them, not computers. Some of these factors include content analysis, levels of meaning and purpose, text structure and organization, and visual supports. Now, by content analysis, the article states that, although the readability measure on a text may be relatively low, the content can be quite challenging. An author's unique writing characteristics like length and order of sentence, poetry, dialogue, and satirical commentary can all make a reading's content very rich. Also, the level of meaning and purpose come into play when calculating complexity. On the surface, a text may mean one thing, but when thought deeply about, new meanings can be found. Text structure and organization is also important in calculating complexity. Texts are usually structured for the reader to follow a plot, gain information, or be persuaded. Some are easier to understand than others. This article notes that texts are generally a bit easier to read when they include more signal words that alert a reader to a structure, such as first, next, and finally, in a chronologically ordered text. And lastly, visual supports are very important in complexity. Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Now, to talk to us a little bit about the reader and their importance in the complexity of text, let's swing on over to our field correspondent, Kevin, who's with us via Skype. Kevin, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Kevin. I'm having a little trouble hearing you, but that's all right. Now, every time we read, we bring a host of experiences, knowledge, and opinions to the text. In turn, the text acts upon us as we read to further evoke and inform those experiences. This is what we refer to as translation. Other factors help readers understand complex readings too. The article notes 4 factors: language proficiency, background knowledge, the reader's experiences, and the reader's motivation. First, language proficiency. The article quotes, students identified as English learners do additional cognitive work because they must attend both to the message of the text and the necessary cognitive resources needed to make sense of a text written in a less familiar language. Now, a similar argument can be made for students with learning and reading disabilities. All readers must tackle unfamiliar vocabulary and rhetorical structures that can make a text more difficult. Now we move on to background knowledge. Formal academic learning acquired by a reader affects his or her ability to understand the text. Formal knowledge includes the academic knowledge needed to correctly interpret the reading. The article says that it is very important to understand what background knowledge is needed in order to understand the text. This we can look back into what we've talked about in class with schema. Now, we've previously mentioned how prior experiences faced by a reader can help understand complex texts. Again, this is referred to as translation. The last factor talked about in the reading is we move to reader's motivation. The article says that, and quote, the intrinsic interest a reader brings to a text can make it accessible in ways that defy conventional measures of ability. Which basically means if we want to read a text and we're interested in the topic, we are more adept at understanding it, no matter the complexity. With all of this said, as readers, we should stop blaming the text when we don't understand it. Maybe we should start looking at ourselves first. Back to you, Kevin.
We've talked already about the three main factors in determining a complex text. We move now to the task as a whole in tonight's special report. Now, the quantitative and qualitative measures of a text, as well as the characteristics of the reader, must be taken into consideration when selecting a complex piece. These factors should further inform the design of the task itself. Teacher-led tasks provide students with insight into how the text is understood by an expert in the discipline. You. The article outlines 5 ways a task will work or fail. To spark student motivation in a reading task must contain the following. 1. Relevance. 2. Some sort of student choice. 3. Methods with a history of proven success. 4. Collaboration with peers. And 5. Thematic units. Readings should be punctuated with teacher modeling, think-alouds, collaborative learning in the company of peers, and discussion propelled through relevant text-based questions. Before concluding tonight's show, we'd like to share with you some tips from the article for all of you teachers out there using complex text with your students. Select short, worthy passages. Design your lessons so students reread. Ask your students to read with a pencil. Remind students to note any confusions they may have. Model the text for your students. Discuss the text. And lastly, ask text-dependent questions. On behalf of all of us down here at the Evening News, I'm your host, Kevin Aniello. Good night.